And so I want to talk about the so-called left people, socialists, Marxists, communists, and people like that. In particular, those who support Putin, support his regime, and support aggression against Ukraine, on the basis that Putin is just defending himself, that he's doing everything correct, it's just protection, or he's trying to help Ukraine to denazify it, that kind of bullshit stories. And I just mentioned a few, okay? But this is the two main reasons, two main excuses why many of the left, I'm not talking about Russian left, absolute majority of Russian left support Putin, but I'm mostly talking about a Western left, let's call them Western left, that's supposed to be kind of smarter, supposed to be above that. They supposed to understand the reasons, but yet they fell for the propaganda. They completely fall for the Putin's propaganda. And there is two reasons. There is two reasons for that. First is that they just can't imagine the same Russian people, the same people that in 20th century, during the Soviet period, have done so much positive, progressive for the humanity. Build the socialism, made the revolution, and then build the socialism, obviously, defeated Nazis, not alone, of course, but let's admit, yes, the biggest input was by the Soviet Russia, and to this left, to these Western left wingers, it is kind of serves as the indulgence. It is like indulgence for the possible, for the any potential, any hypothetical even crimes and evil deeds committed by the post-Soviet Russians. They think in this way, like how the same people that 3 or 4 decades ago were building socialism successfully and doing all of these incredible achievements, all of these progressive achievements that I mentioned, right? The revolution, defeat of Nazi Germany. How could these same people, after that, become such a regressive force on the planet? How can they possibly commit crimes? How could they possibly become a force of evil in the majority? So for this, left-wingers, for these pseudo-left-wingers, like I said, the past positive progressive deeds of the Soviet Russia serve as the excuse, as an indulgence for the any possible future crimes of the post-Soviet Russians. So this is the first reason. This is a kind of, obviously it's not scientific, it's not objective view on the Russians as the population in general. It is quite nationalistic, I would say. It is very superficial, nationalistic worldview. It is obvious to me that the Russians of the Soviet period, during Stalin, during the revolution, it's one generation of people, very different generation from post-Soviet Russians. So this is like two completely different people, even though they were both Russians by ethnicity, by nationality, and stuff like that. But this is not important. This doesn't matter. Okay, the mere fact that these two generations were Russians is not important. That means nothing, because the nationalistic worldview of Russians, that they inherently just cannot do anything wrong. It's like some sort of superstitious, idealistic view on Russian people by many Western, unfortunately, by many very smart Western left wingers, Marxists, even communists. And this is the big problem. This is the big problem. And this is I wanted to point out. Another problem is the constant. Second reason is the constant comparison of the Putin's Russia to the United States when it's convenient, and when it's not convenient, these left wingers they stop this comparison. For example, what I mean by that, take for example United States and its behavior towards Cuba, towards Latin America, first and most of all. And I think you know the history of the attempts to invade Cuba after the Cuban Socialist Revolution, constant attempts to ruin its socialist regime. You know that, and the blockade, this criminal blockade that's been imposed, and this is just, I'm taking one small land, and pretty much all sane, all left, and even not left people, but a majority of left wingers, they do condemn this imperialistic treatment of Cuba, this treatment of Cuba and the whole Latin America as the sphere of influence of United States. And we condemn that. Obviously left wingers condemn that. That is like goes without saying. Majority, at least, think that this is the wrong behavior, and this is why many left hate United States. That United States think this, pretty much the whole world, to be honest, the whole planet is its sphere of influence, and especially the Latin American countries. And Cuba is the most extreme case, I think, of this. And this is the correct position. This is the absolutely correct position to condemn the American imperialism against the neighboring countries, and the fact that it thinks that Cuba must be its sphere of influence, and it must be subservient to the interests of USA, and do whatever the hell it wants. This is a correct position to condemn this imperialism. But when the same is being done by the Putin's regime, by Putin's Russia, towards the neighboring countries of the Russia, obviously the Belarus, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and so on and so on. But mostly let's take right now Ukraine, because it's like the most obvious and most bizarre case of the Russian imperialism. And obviously, it is like goes without saying, it is absolutely obvious to anyone who has a brain that Russia thinks we are its sphere of influence, and no NATO, no European Union should get its hands on the Ukraine. That Ukraine must informally informally belong to the interests of the to be subjugated to the interests of the Putin's regime, to the interests of Putin's Russia. That's like the obvious thing that anyone with the brain and most basic analytic capabilities can understand it. And even before this war began, the Putin's regime tried to recreate, rebuild the pre-Soviet Russia, the the Russian Empire, a kind of variation of that, and it tries to this day, but the attempts began long before 2014 aggression against Ukraine. Long before that. Again, this is like the most obvious things, and this kind of attitude towards Ukraine, the same attitude that United States has towards Cuba, the same attitude is not being condemned, but in fact supported by these so-called left, by this so-called Western left, that think that Putin is just doing everything for the interests of Russia, for the interests of protecting the Russia. I think here we have a regular case, a normal case of double standards. When you condemn this type of behavior towards one country because you don't like this particular country, in this case United States, and you support this behavior of other country that's very far away from you, and you wholeheartedly support the same, even more harsh, even more aggressive behavior, the same type of behavior of the other country, in this case Putin's Russia. Some people might try to, excuse, like, you don't understand, it's different, it's NATO. NATO is trying to encroach itself and invade, the Russia, all of this bullshit. This is the cretinous bullshit, the idiotic excuse. Nothing more than just pathetically disguised, very poorly, very badly disguised imperialist war of conquest against Ukraine. This is what it is. And Putin's been expressing these views to return back the territories, as he thinks, the ancient Russian territories that were undeservedly given by the Bolsheviks to the Ukraine. That is the Crimea, that is the eastern Ukraine, central Ukraine. So he's been expressing these worldviews before the invasion. Okay? So if you paid attention, if you listen to what he's talking about, you would easily understand it. You would very easily understand that this is his true intentions. This is the true reasons why he invaded us. This is not to protect against NATO. And again, I'm not defending NATO. I'm not a fan of NATO, never been. But again, it is insane to think that people who rule NATO are suicidal, that they are some imbeciles, some idiots that want to, destroy our planet, to kill everything on this planet because of the nuclear war, which would guarantee would happen if NATO tried to attack and tried to invade Russia, Putin's Russia. I mean, I don't believe even for a second that the people who preside over NATO, that they are some psychopathic, suicidal, a complete idiots. No, I don't believe in that. I'm not thinking that there's some genius or uh, good-hearted individuals, but let's not exaggerate things and to think that they are complete morons and that they don't understand the consequences of trying to invade Putin's Russia, a nuclear country filled with the hundreds of rockets, nuclear missiles. I don't think the NATO is that primitive. At least I haven't found any proofs, any real proofs. I'm not talking about speculations. I'm not talking about someone's idiotic interpretations. I'm talking about any real proofs of the alleged NATO's attempts, alleged desire to alleged uh, alleged desire to commit aggression against Russia. I haven't found any of that. They don't. They just don't exist. Okay, it just doesn't exist. So it was very easy for Putin to present it as the if if it's like NATO try to invade Russia for the people who don't possess, I don't know, some basic education, people who have zero understanding how these type of things work, who I guess don't have any basic logic, reason and common sense. And yes, it's it is obvious to me that Putin's propaganda very easily brainwashed these left wingers. And I'm not saying that these people that is left that support Russia that they are some evil, that they have like evil intent just because they support the Russian invasion against Ukraine. They just heavily brainwashed, and they truly believe that this is the right decision to defend itself. That's they think that this is just Russia defending itself. So they don't view Russia as imperialist in this case, in this war, even when it's annexed Ukrainian territories, joined Ukrainian territories obviously, and killed so many people, civilians, constantly committing war crimes. Even after that, they're still convinced that it is all a fault of NATO. Okay, so yeah, I guess the intellectual level and the educational level of these left wingers is not really good enough to just ask very simple questions like that. Like I just point out, like how would you envision NATO's invasion into Russia without overseeing, without expecting pretty much guaranteed a world annihilation, without having the complete planet destroyed by nuclear war between NATO and Russia. Just ask that one question. How do you see this realistically? This hypothetical scenario of NATO of getting Ukraine into NATO and then use this this landscape, this territory to invade Russia, and that would not result in the complete and total destruction of the whole planet. Just one that simple question alone is that alone question is enough to destroy all of the conspiracy nonsense that they tried to invade Russia. Again, I think the people who rule NATO, mainly United States, they should have at least. They had many decades after the fall of Soviet Union. They had multiple decades to come to Putin, sit together, develop some sort of agreements to regulate uh, this um, this potential conflict between NATO and Russia, to outline the some basic behavior, to sign some agreements now on paper, officially, openly on paper, that would guarantee that NATO would not go into Ukraine, would not go into Belarus, whatever, or some other country, and that Russia would not get into, its military bloc into Ukraine, into Belarus, and so on and so on. They could have done that. They could have made such agreements, but this is the problem. The American leaders, American rulers, are too egocentric, are too too delusional. They are too nationalistic. They're infected by this delusion of grandeur, by the exceptionalism, and the idea that they should not ask anyone's permission on this planet to do anything. that they by default have, by definition, they have the right to do whatever the hell they want to anyone, to anything, and anyone they want on this planet, and not ask anyone's permissions, and not consider the spheres of influence of other countries, like the sphere of influence of Russia, for example. I think this is the huge problem. This is the main reason, is that these highly narcissistic, ultra-nationalistic behavior of Western leaders, first and most of all of United States, that led to this conflict. A lack of desire to to talk to the other big countries and to consider their spheres of influence. I think that played a huge role. That played a biggest role in this conflict. I think this is the main reason. Is just why they didn't sign any contracts, any agreements, and official agreements between NATO and Russia, is lack of desire of the United States rulers. That obviously we understand that they call in the shots in NATO. We understand it like very, very, very well, that the main driving force of NATO is United States. And Germany and France never really cared, and Britain and Italy, they never really cared about getting Ukraine into NATO. They never really expressed desire. They never really wanted us into NATO. And I didn't see big. I haven't seen a big desire from the many of the people of United States and rulers of United States. But like I said, the probably the huge ego, this huge arrogance of the American leaders, that is the main problem. Why they didn't even try to sit together with Putin, and just talk, just simply talk about this. This is the main reason. And yes, that played out very badly, catastrophically for my country. Ukraine is basically right now a kind of how put it, a kind of Eastern European Iraq. It's not yet Afghanistan, but it is, I think, something on the level of Iraq. After it was invaded, after it was invaded by the United States, or Libya, or something like that. I think this is the good comparison. This is my country right now. It is pretty much the Eastern European Iraq. This is what it is. And I don't see anything changing. I don't see much hope on the horizon. I don't see any any light in the end of this tunnel. Even after war will be over. I mean, the country is severely heavily damaged and the full of credits. It's filled with debts. It got so much debt. Uh, I think it's right now. I think they said recently that the Ukrainian debt to GDP relative to GDP is like more than 100%. A huge freaking number. Just unbelievable number. And obviously, I don't want to pay this. I don't want to pay this debt neither to Trump, neither to United States, considering its part in this conflict. And like I said, I don't think that Ukraine have a chance to become a country of the level of like Poland of today. I mean, or even Baltic countries. The damage is very serious, and I'm as an economist, I'm a professional economist, and I understand that the amount of resources that must be poured into the Ukraine to recover it from the economic damage. I'm not even talking about the human damage, the psychological, the damage to the human capital. I'm just purely economic damage. The amount of resources must be huge, just extremely immense, and I don't see who is going to give us who's gonna give us all of that. So I don't have any hope for this country and for my life in this country anymore. And yeah, I just I thought that would be correct to call out and to call out these pseudo left wingers that so easily fell for the Putin's propaganda and basically they propagate the double standards when it comes to the United States and the Russia, for example, in comparison, like I showed, they are two imperialist countries, and yet the Russian imperialism is very easily forgiven on the bullshit excuses, on the different just idiotic, nonsensical excuses, and the American imperialism is being like, oh, no big, we must condemn every step of the United States. I think it needs to be called out. I think it needs to be talked about more and more openly. So this is relatively small talk about this type of things. So yes, that's it for now, I guess. Thank you for your time. Bye bye.